Here we are. Thank you, Rand, for being with us, and we're really keen to hear from you. I will just spotlight you so everyone can see you, and I also want to make you host, so you have opportunity to share your screen.
Terrific. All right, thank you, Agnes, and thank you, David, for having me. I'm excited to join. Big fan of customer experience and of MadeFor, and yeah, looking forward to hopefully providing some interesting value here. All right, this looks full screen for everybody. Zoom slideshow. Awesome, fantastic, good stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to get right into it. If you are in customer experience, you're almost certainly also touching, if not directly involved in the Venn diagram of product and marketing. And that is a personal passion and something that's very important to me. Many of you almost certainly do customer research today, and hopefully some form of audience research, understanding the people who might become customers, who aren't yet customers, who marketing needs to reach in order to turn them into customers. And I thought we'd kick off talking about my favorite. So there's these sort of 12 to 15 years, the golden age of digital marketing, before anyone cared about privacy, before anyone took anything away from cookies, before the platforms were saturated with advertising and advertisers, when rapid growth of both the internet itself and Facebook and Google and Amazon and mobile devices meant that there was just an incredible amount of space for all of us to play, often at extremely low costs. And so, you know, if you made a decent product available at a reasonable price and you bought some ads on the major platforms, oh, wow, look at that, sales and profits and, you know, brand growth and, oh, what a great lifestyle I have, success, brilliant, genius. And this is not the case anymore. I found this article from the Financial Times. I think Agnes and David will make the slides available to everyone. They'll send them around to everyone, so you can get the links. But you know, did a really good job of the Financial Times looked at 1,300 online brands selling on the web using digital marketing, and they found that the return on investment over the last few years has been dropping dramatically. So if you were advertising on Facebook, you were advertising on Google, you're advertising on whatever, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, LinkedIn, costs have gone up, returns have gone down. Those spaces have gotten incredibly crowded. I think the pandemic accelerated this because every single brand moved online. And then, of course, you know, over the last 9 months, we've sort of had a pseudo recession, certainly in the stock market. And that means that Facebook and Google in particular, and all the tech stocks broadly, are chasing growth. They need to show financial growth. They can't just show user growth anymore. And so naturally they charge advertisers more. And we've also seen some weird stories the last few years in the marketing universe, ones that I find fascinating. I think you will too, if you haven't seen these already, right? So stuff like, oh, Procter & Gamble, big brand in the United States and actually in Europe as well. They own a ton of different consumer product brands. And what they basically did is worked with their kind of in-house advertising team to massively cut their spend, right? $1/5 of $1 billion. And through that increased reach, Chase had a similar story in the New York Times a little while ago, it was a few years ago, where they cut down where their ads were appearing and saw similar results. Uber had a big story about how they'd been wasting hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and they cut that cost and then saw improved results. eBay cut their Google advertising and saw improved results. Here's Brian Chesky from Airbnb. This is probably one of the most quoted ones, right? Where Airbnb essentially slashed their entire paid and performance marketing budget down to just 5% of what it used to be, and saw the same traffic, and the numbers reflect that. And it's pretty startling, right? I think it's hard to understand like what is going on here. And I've talked to tons and tons of small and medium businesses who've done the same thing, right? Essentially, they've entirely cut their advertising budgets, or they have trimmed them significantly, trimmed their reach significantly, and they've seen better results, right? Actually more conversions with the same number, but for a much lower cost. And I think this can be explained by a story. If you've been around the marketing universe for a while, you might have heard this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because I like it a lot. So this is the parable of the pizzeria. So this is a pizzeria, the Pizzeria Sibilla in Milan, which was right around the corner from the hotel I was staying at earlier this year, and so I took a picture of it. But story goes like this: the pizzeria owner says to herself, "You know, I need to get more business. I need more customers. Okay, I got an idea. I'm going to offer discount codes." So she hires 3 local neighborhood scamps, some little scoundrels from around the town. This is in Brera, and she says, "Okay, you 3, I want you to take the white paper." Oh, I think we got somebody waiting. Okay, I want you to take the this white discount code. I want you to take this green discount code. I want you to take the red discount code. And you're going to hand out these flyers all around town, see if you can get some more business coming into the pizzeria. So the kids run off, and, the woman watches over the next month. The kid with the green piece of paper, with the green discount code, something like half the customers who are coming in with this green discount code. And the woman who runs the pizzeria, she thinks, "Oh my God, what's happening? How is this kid so good?" So you know what? She gets rid of the other 2 kids who are barely bringing in any business, and she gives the green kid all the flyers. 6 months later, she's reviewing her books with her accountant, and the accountant says, "Well, the good news is business is up about 7%, but the bad news is you're giving away a lot of discounts." And the pizzeria owner thinks, 7%? How can that possibly be? Almost everybody who's coming in is coming in with this green flyer. We must be getting tons of new business. I don't understand. So what does she do? She puts on a disguise one morning, and she follows the kid, right? And follows the little neighborhood scamp. He's handing out his green flyers. And what does she see? Well, he goes out of the pizzeria, and he makes a left, and he ducks into an alley around the corner. And he just waits there, and he watches and sees if anybody is going toward the pizzeria. And if they look like they're going to the pizzeria, he jumps out and hands them the green flyer with the discount code. Because, he reasons, why would I work hard to make more sales when I could just get credit for sales that are already going to happen? This is Facebook and Google's motto, right? If you work on the Facebook and Google team, why work hard to make more sales? We know a bunch of people are going to whatever it is, P&G or eBay or your store. We know they're going to buy. We'll show them your ad, and then we'll take credit when the conversion happens. And very frankly, I think this is happening a lot. So what are we going to do, right? The goal here, the goal of any type of marketing that we do, is that we want to find a flywheel that works for us. So a flywheel, right, in the marketing universe is sort of the gold standard, right? The thing that we're trying to achieve. And the way that a flywheel works is that you start by doing a marketing thing, whatever that thing is. You could buy an ad, right? You could publish a blog post. You could be a guest on a webinar. You could send a tweet, right? The smallest form of marketing that someone can do. And then you try and boost that thing's reach, right? So that it reaches more people. Maybe it gets retweets if it's on Twitter, or it gets more views on YouTube, or you amplify the podcast on your social channels. You send it through your email newsletter, and hopefully you engage and grow your audience, right? More people coming back again. And then you improve your algorithmic signals. If it's email, the goal is essentially you want to be in the primary tab, not in the promotions tab. If it's Twitter, you want Twitter to show your tweets more and more times to more people in the future because you've earned algorithmic reputation. Same with Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok or any of these. If it's Google, right, you're trying to rank higher in the organic results and get more authority. And this way you get higher return on investment next time. Right? So when you do the thing again, it works even better. And there's kind of 2 ways that a flywheel in marketing can scale, right? One is with decreasing friction, meaning every subsequent investment that you make is easier than the last one. Or it scales with increasing return on investment, That is, it takes the same amount of effort, but you get more out of it each time you do it. A lot of advertising is like this, right? If I buy Google Ads, it's not going to get cheaper every time, usually, but it is hopefully going to get more, a better return for me. And the core of audience research and customer research for marketing purposes is to make this flywheel turn better, right? Make each of these steps work well. Audience research tells us which tactics and channels we should try. It tells us how to distribute messages. It tells us who and what gives what. It says my screen sharing is paused. Can you see my screen?
You can see it, but I think it's just standing on one slide.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're trying to ping you.
Why is that happening? Which slide was it on?
On the first slide.
No. So you didn't see any of this as it was happening?
No, but we followed the story.
Oh my God. Well, you know,
we're still here, so you're doing great.
Okay, well, fun. At least you'll get the slides. So when I point and say this quote from Brian Chesky, you're all like, yeah, he's pointing to something in his office. Who knows? This guy's crazy. All right, very exciting. Well, now you can see that there were wonderful visuals that accompanied this whole experience. And now there's people who are admitted, oh, I see, I'm the host. And when I became the host, it paused my screen sharing, but it doesn't give me a message until I exit out of my presentation. Fantastic. Okay. Well, good to know for the future, Zoom. All right. Well, now you know how the marketing flywheel works. Thanks for sticking with me. All right. If anything goes wrong, I want you to butt in. You gotta interrupt me. No, no letting me ramble on anymore. All right. Let's go back to where we were. Okay. So good. At least we can get the meat of the presentation. Hopefully this will. Oh, screen sharing paused again. Why? Okay, resume. Okay, so we're going to talk about 5 big mistakes that teams make in audience research today. And the first mistake is assuming that your customers and your audience are the same people. They are not. So audience falls into 4 groups. There's basically current customers, right? People who've bought your product or service, potential customers who are hopefully right fits, amplifiers, right? People who, journalists in media, conference and event organizers, social accounts that are influential in your field, and the broader community, right? People who consume content in this field, but aren't necessarily customers for you. And if you ignore these people and put all your energy into these 2, your marketing is going to have a terrible time because you cannot get that increase in your flywheel. You can't get that scaled approach. I like to try and visualize these things. So I'll use a little Venn diagram here, right? So the way I imagine it is you've got your broad interest-based community of in whatever product or sector or field that you're in. There's potential customers in there that are some subset. And inside that are current customers. Hopefully that current customers is a small group inside of potential. And then there's amplifiers, which overlaps with all of these groups, but some of them are even outside the interest-based community, right? They could be journalists who are not in your field at all. And the most successful marketing that you can do appeals to the intersection of potential customers and potential amplifiers. That's where I try and put most of my organic marketing energy. So, if you are, for example, here, Stabilio, right? Stabilo, you might try and do 2 things with your advertising campaign. It's a very classic advertising campaign, right? But it's trying to reach potential customers who might think about the highlighter itself and might be customers to the highlighter, and amplifiers because it is using a social and political movement to try and make a statement. You can see a lot of brand advertisers do this around, topics, as far ranging as the war in Ukraine or, civil rights movements in the United States and elsewhere. And yeah, I mean, the goal is to be like this. I whenever I talk to or I'm helping out a brand or building a brand for that matter, my goal is always, I want to be the brand in the space. I don't, I used to be in SEO, right? So I used to say, oh, I want to rank for highlighter pen. But now my goal is not to rank for highlighter pen, but to be bigger, to have my brand be bigger than all of the generic keywords combined. And you build that brand through reaching both potential amplifiers and potential customers. All right, number 2, relying on surveys and interviews alone. I think that surveys and interviews can do a beautiful job with a lot of kinds of information that you want, but they fall prey, as I'm sure you know, anyone in customer experience knows, to a lot of misleading bias. So here's a survey we ran for SparkToro. This is around kind of our product research. And we got 80 responses from paying subscribers. I think at the time we had about 400 or 500 customers, so a reasonable response rate. And selection bias obviously could seriously warp our conclusions here, right? When we were asking this, because only people who paid for SparkToro between April 15th and 22nd, when we sent this out, could possibly see this survey. So it can't tell us anything about people who experienced SparkToro but didn't become customers, or customers who canceled their subscription, or all the potentially great fit customers who have never even heard of our product. That we're just missing them, right? So we don't know anything about those people. And I went and looked. There's 32,000 LinkedIn profiles that have the word audience research somewhere in their job title or role. And there was one SparkToro survey respondent out of those 80 who used that word in their profile. So I think that's a pretty big blind spot. That is troubling. That's not ideal. What I need to add on to any type of survey or interview, especially for marketing, but I think even for product, is to understand people that match our criteria who we can't reasonably survey or interview, and also questions that you cannot reasonably ask in a survey or interview, right? So if I say, hey, Agnes, will you tell me all the podcasts that you've listened to in the last 12 months and which ones you're subscribed to? Also, would you tell me every email newsletter that you receive regularly? And can you tell me the websites, maybe the, say, 75 websites that you visit the most in this particular sector? Also, would you mind telling me which YouTube channels you're subscribed to? No offense to Agnes, you might be, the brilliant exception to this, but no one can give you that information. Not in a survey, not in an interview. They just can't tell you, right? What you really need to do is go get the home addresses of all your customers and potential customers. Then you need to learn lockpicking and how to disable a security system. You break into their house, you got to steal their phone, get their unlock code, right? And then you're going to go and look at everything they read, watch, listen to, subscribe to. You thought you were going to get ethical tips today, didn't you? But no, instead, it's me, Crime Rand. The only way to do this reasonably is to use the people whose data is publicly on the web. If you go visit Sarah Collins's profile here on LinkedIn, it shows you who she follows, what groups she's part of, what she's posted about, her job title and role. That's all public. It links to her Twitter profile, which shows you everything she follows on Twitter. You can find her Instagram and shows you everything, right? If that Instagram profile is public, shows you everything she's subscribed to. Then you can go find their YouTube profile and see everything that she subscribes to, every channel she subscribed to. This data is public for hundreds of millions of people. And that is where this passively collected data is so useful. So I'll show you, right? What I like to do is combine these practices. So you start by interviewing, customers and non-buying customers. This is Force of Nature, one of my favorite e-commerce brands right now. They sell regenerative agriculture protein. So meat mostly from invasive species. So, boars aren't supposed to be here in this area, and deer are taking over southern New Jersey, and right. So they'll sell you kind of both a healthier and better raised and environmentally sound kind of meat. And so, you might reasonably ask questions to these folks like, what have you heard about bison or venison or boar and regenerative agriculture, which for a lot of people is nothing. Where do you buy your meat? What else have you considered, right? What's important to you? So you're asking the standard kind of survey and interview types questions. And then you're attempting to get that data at scale with market surveys. I like starting with interviews because you get a bunch of information that you can then go validate through surveys. And I like that better than sort of starting with a survey and then picking out individual people to interview. You can do it both ways. You can do survey, interview, survey. That works too. And I do recommend, and I do like running on-site surveys. In the e-commerce world, a few folks do this well. I just bought some towels. Just bought some towels and got this like, okay, how'd you hear about us? This is Kettle and Fire from Austin does the same thing, right? They run this through Typeform, which is pretty well done. It's good on a mobile device. And so they'll ask you sort of, how did you hear about them? If you have emails, you can also start conversations this way. We do this a lot at SparkToro. I sent this one last year, right? Asking, hey, super quick questions. How much value do you get from your free account? What, if anything, holds you back from using it more? And then this helped prioritize a ton of our work in terms of the product at SparkToro the last year. So this gives you audience attributes like, from surveys and interviews, how they describe themselves, what they talk about, who and what they pay attention to, interests, hobbies, passions, job titles, etc. And that is what unlocks passive data at scale opportunities. So now you can take, I'm going to show you this in SparkToro, but you could use any of its competitors to Audience with an S or Helixa.ai. If you have a big budget, BrandWatch has an awesome audience research tool in their system. So I could take a hashtag like nutrition. If I hear that lots of Force of Nature's customers are, oh, I'm into regenerative agriculture and this stuff because I care about my health. Oh, okay. It's not about the ecological impact for them. It's about their personal health. Great. I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to see what people who care about nutrition, their demographics and behaviors at scale from passively collected data. And this is how you can combine that. You get data about the whole market, not just the people that you reach, and you can see where you might have holes and gaps, right? So you can do this manually too. If you feel like it, you can go and crawl, build a crawler or spend a whole lot of human time, visiting these sources and learning from them. But this will tell you things like, here's what this audience reads. Here's what they follow. Here's what they pay attention to. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to get Force of Nature in, I don't know, the Wall Street Journal. It's not on the list, man, right? You're talking about reaching like less than 5% of people who have ever posted, who've posted with the hashtag nutrition. But Michael Pollan, wow, he's very, very influential. No, maybe you can't reach him, but maybe you could do a partnership with Food Tank. Maybe you want to reach out to Civil Eats and see if they have a sponsorship program. Maybe you could get into EcoWatch's email newsletter. Lots of opportunities. Okay, mistake number 3, you focus on limited parts of the buyer's journey. I strongly suspect this is a problem that CX professionals have much less challenge with than most marketers because you're sort of more holistic thinkers. No insult to marketers, but marketers often focus very much on the details. So I really like this thing from the world of behavioral psychology. They use this influence map. I think I've actually seen it in a lot of CX too, where you look at sort of the journey, not necessarily the buyer's journey, but sort of a problem experiencer's journey. And then you try and figure out where you can influence change in that. And at each step of the journey, right, the behaviors, the opportunities to impact change are different. So, classic example would be like the national parks in the United States trying to stop forest fires. And so they try and understand, okay, where can we influence people who are going to go, have a cigarette or, smoke some weed in California, or they're going to start a campfire. And then they're going to leave it and it's going to burn down a whole forest and destroy 50 towns. And, it's a nightmare for the West. And so, they'll look across this influence map to try and understand where can we have the biggest impact. And what behavioral psychologists found was the biggest impact for forest firefighting is having the ranger station. When you drive into a national park, United States, you can't really walk into any national parks, you got to drive. When you drive in, you stop at a ranger station, you buy a ticket to get in. And if the ranger mentions to you, hey, do you smoke? Are you planning on starting a fire today? Are you planning on having a barbecue? Okay, great. We just want to make sure that you're safe. You got to, follow these protocols because we've had a lot of problems with forest fires. And this 90-second conversation apparently is more effective than anything else that they could do in terms of having an impact on the behavior. And marketing's job is really similar to this, right? It's essentially target the right audience in the right place with the right message. So if you really need to reach people, at problem discovery phase for your marketing, because they haven't heard of, what your problem is, for SparkToro, right? For audience research software, like it didn't exist 4 years ago, 3 years ago. We're brand new. I had never heard of a company that does what we did. And so, we're not going to help if we're trying to do solution seeking. Even brand awareness is like useful, but not nearly as useful as problem discovery. And so we don't want to overinvest in the wrong channels. One of the quick ways to do this, if you've used Google Trends, is to in fact look at branded versus unbranded search volume. So for example, in the space of vacation rentals, right, which Airbnb has absolutely dominated the last 10 years, you can see that, if we're talking 2009 Airbnb, it's really about brand awareness for them. That's the stage that they care about. But by 2013, they're bigger than all vacation rentals. So now they got to think about problem discovery, right? And today, actually, they're so big, they're so well known. The problem is known by almost everyone who would possibly buy an Airbnb or rent one, that now it's about further education and solution seeking, right? They're getting their investments by doing things like, hey, we're going to measure Wi-Fi signal at all of the Airbnbs and then publish that on the data, right? It's really that solution seeking phase for folks. All right, mistake number 4, ignoring your audience's sources of influence. Who does this? No, a lot of people do this. Okay, story time, brief story here. So this is Taste magazine. They're not a magazine, they're an email newsletter and a website, but I've subscribed to them for years. I really like them. And as soon as I got this email, I read through it, and this is not unusual for me. I was like, oh man, this fiery condiment sounds like something I really want. I'm gonna buy it. And why did I do it? Right? I didn't need a second opinion. I didn't go search Google. I just went and purchased some salsa matcha. Well, I've subscribed to Taste for 2 years, so I'm familiar with them. And I do it because I like their recommendations. And their past ones have been solid. I trust them. They have no vested interest. They don't use affiliate links or anything. So they're not promoting salsa matcha to get money. They're impartial. Plus, it's already in my inbox, so it's easily available. And this is what I believe. People, publications, podcasts, video creators, social accounts, webinars, events that match these criteria. They're familiar to your audience. They are liked by your audience. They're trusted by your audience. They're perceived as impartial, and they're easily available. Forget about it. This full stop, the best marketing opportunities that exist. Some people will tell you, I want to rank at the top of Google, or I want to have my ads all across Facebook. Not me. This is what I think works absolutely the best. The criteria that I don't much care about are things like, well, how many social followers they got, or how much traffic they get to their website, or domain authority. I know I created it at Moz, but still, or where they rank in Google's results. But yeah, IDGAF, which everyone's familiar with this acronym. I don't gamble against fallacious metrics, nor should you. So if I want to reach people who might buy board games, especially people who are potential amplifiers and influential in the board game universe, I probably want Will Wheaton on Watch It Played and Fantasy Flight Games and Board Game Geek to be talking about my board game somehow. That is the most valuable marketing that I can get. And you can figure this out. There's lots of ways to figure this out, right? You're essentially looking for, here's the group of people I want to reach. Here are the websites, social accounts, podcasts, YouTube channels, whatever it is that they pay attention to. Obviously, this is what SparkToro does, but you can do this manually, right? You can go and look at a bunch of your customers' online profiles and find out the overlap yourself. So what you're essentially trying to do is say, okay, of 518 profiles with the words privacy advocate in their bio, not a huge job title or role, 11% shared or engaged with threat posts across one of their social channels in the past quarter. Okay, that is fantastic. That's exactly whose website I want to be on. And once you know one website, you can use a tool like SimilarWeb. This is free. I don't know why SimilarWeb makes this entirely free, but as long as it is free, I recommend it. You can plug in ThreatPost, and then you can see people who visit ThreatPost also visit these websites in this order. Kind of unbeatable. You can see that similar data for websites that are shared or engaged with on social channels in SparkToro. You can do the same thing with social accounts. You can, once you know about one that reached your audience, you can just go to Twitter. And if you look on the page, Twitter will show you people who follow this social account also follow, which is there you might like, or on LinkedIn, they do the same thing. In SparkToro, you can do the same thing. Podcasts, I don't know of any other tool besides SparkToro that does this, but if anybody else has recommendations, feel free to put it in the chat or let me know. I'll add it to the presentation for the future. I've been looking for other podcast recommendation systems. YouTube channels, same story, right? You can find the YouTube channels. For events, SparkToro doesn't do this, but Google Events is actually, the event search inside of Google is actually pretty solid, and you can find these. The challenge is filtering on locations. And you can select online events only and often find those pretty well, and they're geographic, non-specific, which is nice. All right, last but not least, outsourcing all your audience targeting to Facebook and Google. So story time again, and as usual, I'm going to talk about my favorite thing, which is fancy foods that I like to eat. Mostly pasta, but occasionally salsa much. All right, so I'm during the pandemic, I got obsessed with trying to perfect my pasta game. One of the things I really want to do is pesto. So I look up how to make the best pesto from Serious Eats. You see this thing, this mortar and pestle, they've got giant, like it's this massive marble device. And sure enough, as I'm browsing the web, every website I visit that has good advice about how to make true Italian pesto, true Genovese pesto, mentions this brand, this Nuova Marmotecnica from the Baudoni family. Apparently, you have to get this device to make the best pesto. It's a real pain. So this is like my 16th brand impression, small kitchen in Genoa. Oh my God, she's got one too. Everybody's got this Nuova Marmotecnica. I give up. I will spend $220 on your pesto rock and stick. And sure enough, that's exactly what I did. I'm lucky that I did, by the way, because the price has gone significantly up. I think people figured out, like Nuova Marmotecnica figured out they could charge a lot more for this thing. Also, hot tip, when you make it, it is a full day's workout. It takes like an hour at least of leaf crushing to get the pesto the right thing. And your Fitbit or your With Things watch or whatever will count it as steps, and it'll count the activity. So if you have a day where you're like, I'm not going anywhere, make pesto, friends. You get a full body workout. I guarantee it. It's insanely hard. I'm just pouring sweat making this thing. What happens here is that brands who build high affinity, right? The brand that gets mentioned over and over and over again gets recommended by all these sources of influence. That's the one that has the lowest cost of customer acquisition. You can see the price, right? $6.79 now. Lowest cost of customer acquisition and highest return on investment when they do advertising, when they do marketing. And brands that only invest in ads, that don't get any editorial recommendations, that aren't featured in any of these places. I've never heard of BF Cart's olive wood pet. I don't even know if that works. Is that going to crush against I don't think so. So I've never heard of it. I'm not going to buy it. The way that the advertising slope works, I like to visualize things, right? So Facebook, Apple, Amazon. I realize Netflix is not technically an advertising source, at least not yet. But if you take out the N, the acronym gets very awkward. So we're going to leave it in. But each incremental ad impression and customer conversion costs dollars, right? Every one you want. And as you make efforts to improve ROI, so are your competitors, right? And rising prices, variable inventory. When Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix, TikTok, what they want to show Wall Street more growth, you pay more. Super frustrating, right? So it's essentially this slope just doesn't get any easier. There's no improvement. You can't build a flywheel this way. It's really difficult. But if you do your own audience research, and you can expand beyond the big ad vendor, the duopoly, triopoly in digital marketing. And what I think is that a flywheel like this, which works really well for us, might work for you too, which is you find sources that reach your audience, you provide value that earns their attention, you try and wow them and bring them to your website, right? So that they become your audience. You turn their audiences into your audience. And obviously you have to have an exchange of value to do that. But this makes for a great marketing flywheel. The way that it works for us is we try and find shared value between the brand, our brand, and the publication or person or source of influence that we want to reach, right? So I want publication X to amplify me. What could I do that would earn me coverage? Maybe we'll do some co-marketing. Maybe I'll be a guest on their podcast. Maybe I could be a webinar speaker, or sponsor their email newsletter, or publish research, or run a joint. I mean, this list of things could go infinitely long, right? It's your job to sort of figure out what could be there. And this is how we do it, right? We don't use ads. We don't use any SEO. We barely rank for anything except our name. But we get almost all of our customers because, you know, we go onto industry podcasts, and I mentioned SparkToro, and people come to the website and they try the free version, and then many of them become customers, right? And interviewed on YouTube channels, written about in email newsletters and blogs. This is kind of what Amanda and I do all day for our marketing. Okay, so with that, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We've got some lively chat, and I can tackle some of these too.
So there is a question from David about why do you think that brands still keep investment into ads and huge SEO strategies when simple audience intelligence can open the door to developing real lasting relationships?
So I think advertising is incredibly trackable, right? So whereas Facebook has a ton of dark traffic, if you get clicked on from Facebook and sent over the website, if you're on the mobile version, you won't even see anything in the referral string. So you can't track that. It just looks like somebody came to the website. Google will not tell you what keywords people came from Google with to your website unless you pay for their ad program. YouTube works the same way. Let's say we're on this webinar together. Let's say somebody is listening to this and they're like, oh, I'm going to check out SparkToro. So they go to Google and they search for SparkToro, or they go to sparktoro.com. There's no way in the world that I'll ever be able to say, oh man, I'm really glad I did that, event with Agnes and David for the MadeFor talks because somebody came and, became a customer. I'll never be able to track it. But if I buy advertising from Google, they will show my ad across the web, right, to all these people who might have bought SparkToro anyway. And then it looks like it's perfectly attributable to Google's advertising. They're passing out the green flyers, right? They're the kid around the corner in the alley from the pizzeria. That's something that CMOs and CEOs and boards have been trained to expect in the marketing universe. They expect that attribution. And when you say, hey, it's serendipitous, it's hard to measure, they're like, yeah, you're not getting any budget for that. This I think is the problem.
I think it's really spot on. That's the challenge. And we have also a question from Adriana. So what about influencer marketing?
Yeah, so when I describe it, Adriana, I say sources of influence because my sense is that over the last 7-8 years, the word influencer has come to mean, person with six-pack abs who poses on beaches around the world, and you can pay them $500 and they'll hold up your product on an Instagram post. And that's not nearly as broad as what I mean when I say sources of influence. Yeah, David, I've seen your abs. Fantastic work. Those crunches are really doing it for you, buddy. I think that I make fun. I don't know what David looks like shirtless. He could totally be a model. I have no idea. But if you are looking at sources of influence, I think the core idea is that a high % of the audience you want to reach actually pays attention to that source, versus influencer, which usually means has a large number of followers on Instagram, YouTube, and or TikTok. And if you if you say influencer, you usually don't mean someone with a podcast. You usually don't mean an email newsletter or a popular blog or a website that people visit or an event or conference. And I want to include all those things when I talk about sources of influence. So I'm not saying influencers can't work. They can, but I'm nervous that a lot of influencer behavior is sort of a broad brand marketing play, when what you really want to do a lot of the time is find a more targeted, appropriate audience for exactly your message. Is influencer just a rebrand of opinion leader? I don't think so necessarily. I almost feel like opinion leaders are often excluded from the influencer set. And that's just because I think it's sort of the demographic, psychographic of who, right? Opinion leader is often in a B2B space or a, whatever, higher ed, government, nonprofit, politics, those kinds of things. An influencer is often very consumer focused, very, in a few categories like travel, health, fitness, diet, fashion, those kinds of things. Agnes, was there any other question that from the up above that I?
Yeah, no, not above, but we have Anand and Nicholas still. So I will have, we already are running over time, so I will allow a question. So let's do
so
Nicholas.
Yeah, I saw Nicholas's question. I can answer that one real quick if we want.
Sure, please do.
Okay, sounds good. So how do you mobilize change in a change adverse organization? The two best ways that I found to be effective about this is to, before you ask for any budget around it, show the work and the conversation, right? Essentially say, hey, we have a ton of, you can see in our analytics, we have a ton of conversions that we think Google might be taking credit for, Facebook might be taking credit for, TikTok might be taking credit for, that would have happened anyway. And there's only one way to validate that. We'd have to test. How do you folks feel about seeing if we bring down our ad budget significantly, whether we still get the same number of conversions for the next 3 or 6 months? Maybe it's a good time to save money anyway, right? That we could have that test conversation. I think framing conversations like that can be a good start. And then you look at places, well, where can we put our marketing otherwise? The other one that works well is to show them the competition, right? So you say, hey, here's our competitor. They're getting these kinds of results. Look at the spike in searches. You can buy some data from SimilarWeb or a clickstream provider and sort of show, gosh, they're getting a lot of conversions. They're getting a lot of traffic, a lot of interest in their product. And they're doing things that they can't measure perfectly. They're doing, whatever, brand forms of marketing and marketing through sources of influence. They're appearing on these podcasts. They're getting all this news coverage and PR. They are sponsoring this email newsletter. We don't do that stuff because we can't measure it. Do you think we're losing out to them? And when you bring that up, a lot of the times, I don't know what it is, like leadership management isn't convinced by anything you say, but if their competitors are doing it, they're like, oh my God, we can't let them win. So this can start the conversation too.
Thank you so much. I think Nicholas also saying thank you. Thanks, Rand. Really, really appreciate your talk. I think people really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone takes a bits and pieces of wisdom from you. Thank you again. We have cats and babies and children joining us, so welcome. And I see that one baby even fell asleep while we while you were talking. That's all good signs. Thank you again. We'll keep in touch and hope to see you in our next MadeFor talks. Thank you, Rand. Thank you, David. Thanks, everyone.